Hi guys, Darrion here at Blue Moon Yoga Clovis. Today we are going to be working with you guys on how to get into headstands. So headstands are a great inversion practice. They are a great kind of way to learn how to get into your pincha or perhaps your handstand. They're a great foundation pose for those. They're also just a ton of fun to learn to get upside down and to kind of feel that feeling of flight. So today I'm going to help you guys with a couple of tips on things to know before you progress and then how to get into the posture itself. So tip number one that I like to remind my students for headstand is always to prepare. You never want to go into this variation or this posture without any preparation. It can do a lot of harm on your shoulders, your neck, and if you're not strengthened right, then there's a lot of room to fall and hurt yourself. So I always like to remind you guys, make sure that you're flowing, take 5, 10, maybe 15 minutes to run through some sun A's, do some chaturangas, maybe some core planks, really get your shoulders and your core fired up before you progress into headstand. Second thing, tip number 2, is use the wall if you need. If you're new to headstand and you're still learning how to fall out of a posture, using the wall is a great way to give you something to support yourself and also to kind of figure out where your center of balance is. So don't be afraid to grab a prop, use the wall, use the couch, whatever you have available to you to kind of figure out where your center of gravity is before you move away and try this posture on your own. Tip number 3 is to try different variations. There are lots of different variations of headstand, and one usually resonates with a student more than another. For example, for me, I was able to take to a supported headstand a lot faster than I was able to take to a tripod headstand. However, that can be opposite for you, as it usually is for a lot of people, but make sure that you're playing around with variation to variation, kind of figuring out what your body likes and dislikes, and then growing from there. Tip number 4, and this one always scares people, is practice a press. Regardless of whether you plan on pressing into a headstand right away or not, the act of practicing that movement and building the core strength is really going to help you set yourself up for getting into this posture and building the correct muscles to maintain it and breathe in it. We always like to say that you're not really holding a pose until you're breathing in a pose. So remember those 4 tips, and then we'll go ahead and move on to how to get into these postures. So first things first, I'll be teaching you guys how to get into a supported headstand. So starting with knees on the earth, supported headstand is going to start with a webbing to webbing grip, but you always want to start out with spacing your arms out correctly. So I always like to start by bringing my elbows to the mat, bringing each hand to each elbow crease, and letting that determine the distance of your elbows. Once you've set up the distance of your elbows, you can release the hands from your elbow creases, interlace the fingers in a webbing to webbing grip, and then plant the outsides of your hands and your forearms into the earth. This is going to help set up and teach you where you need to be placing your arms to set up for that supported headstand. So elbows, forearms, outsides of my hands are all pressing into the earth, and I have this webbing to webbing grip with my hands. With this webbing to webbing grip with my hands, I've created a little cradle for my head. So the crown of my head is going to go right into the space that I've made with my hands. And from here, you'll tuck your toes under, hike your hips high. This may be as far as we're going when we're first learning this posture, and that's okay. This is a very funky feeling of getting our hips above our head, getting the blood flowing the opposite way, and also learning how to distribute your weight into your forearms and into your shoulders here. After you've hiked your hips up to the sky, you want to walk your feet as close to your face or as close to your elbows or shoulders as you can. As you walk your feet in, it's going to hike your hips higher above your head. From here, we can play with maybe just pressing one leg, kind of just getting used to the feeling of balancing, of finding that line of toes over hips, overhead, and then maybe switching. One foot down, next foot up. Finding that feeling. And when I say practice a press, we'll move on to the next step. You want to walk your toes a little bit closer. Now, as you walk your toes in, you'll notice naturally all the weight is going to shift into your forearms, into the crown of your head, and your toes are almost going to want to lift up off the mat naturally. Not to say that you need to press your first time, but practicing a press and walking your toes closer in is just going to help shift the weight from your body. So from here, we can either practice with one leg up and let the other leg float up after. Holding, navel pulls in, really pressing the toes up to the sky, pressing down through the forearms, and coming down. Or you can practice with bringing your toes really, really close to your head, using the core and floating both legs up at a time. Use the wall behind you. Fall if you need. Float a little while. Find some hang time. And then float back down. Practice makes practice. You'll never be perfect your first time around, but consistency is key. So that's your supported headstand. Next, we will move on to our tripod headstand, which looks a little bit different, but for some people kind of helps distribute weight a little bit more. For tripod headstand, you'll start with the crown of the head in the earth, and you'll set up your arms just like little tripods. So you want to create that 90-degree shelf with shoulder to elbow over wrist. And from here, after you've set up, it's just the same thing, hiking the hips up, walking the feet closer to you. Fortunately, here there is a difference in tripod headstand. You have these little shelves you've built with your elbows. You can actually bring one knee to the elbow, maybe another knee to the elbow to help you find that shift, shifting the weight forward into the crown of the head and into the palms, and then maybe extending legs up to the sky. Descending with control and throwing in a big smile afterward. So those are my tips for getting into headstand. Make sure that you practice, 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 and we hope to see you back hopefully in our in-person classes, and we'll see you upside down. Hope you guys have a great day.